Sung Chao is one of the most accomplished and influential scholars of Chinese Buddhism. His work was at times an unwitting attempt to reconcile Chinese and Indian Buddhism. Scholars say he lived from about 374 to 1414 AD, which places him between the Han and Tang dynasties. Buddhism was a fresh import from India, and it quickly gained a philosophical influence on Chinese thought. Still, it was also a time when these thoughts and concepts needed to be processed, and the bulk of his work can be seen as an attempt to reconcile traditional Chinese philosophies and Indian Buddhism. This, at times, produces confusing results. Sung Chao allegedly came from a poor family and made his living as a copyist. This profession gave him the access to classic written materials that would come to change his life. One such text, the Vimalakirti, would in this way transform his life's direction. After reading it, he converted to Buddhism and became part of the inner circle of literary men in Chang'an. When the influential Indian Buddhist Kumarajiva came to Kuzhang in northwest China, Sung Chao decided to follow him. He stayed with his teacher at the Park of Perfect Happiness, collecting and collating the sutras, ultimately dying in 1414 AD. Sung Chao's major literary works are some of the best among Chinese Buddhists. They include essays collected in the Chao Wen, prefaces on the Sutras and Sastras, a commentary on the Vimalakirti near Desa Sutra, and the three treatises. The three treatises are The Immutability of Things, The Emptiness of the Unreal, and Prajna is Not Knowledge. They address the concepts of past and present, existence, and the nature of consciousness as proposed by Sung Chao himself. The first treatise, The Immutability of Things, describes the evolution of past to present. It says events or things are quiescent, or identical. At the same time, he says that things have movement, that they are not identical and evolve to become what is now the present. This is a theory of dualism, a theory of quiescence and movement. Still, he complicates the issue when he comments that the things of the past are not in the present, and that the past does not reach the present. How then does change occur? To describe how change occurs, Sung Chao describes the relationship between the states. One way of describing change is likening it to a stream. This idea states that change is flowing. Old water replaces new water, much like the past moments replace the present moments. This model does not represent Sung Chao's own feelings on the subject. He prefers to think of each state as isolated and distinct, yet in constant shuffle. This concept can be compared to that of a slideshow or Nickelodeon. Each slide is static in that it retains its qualities of the image, but it is ever-changing in that the slides are in constant shuffle. To conclude, there really is no development to change according to Sung Chao. Just as each slide image stays the same after being shuffled in a slideshow, each moment stays the same as well. What we see as development is actually the constant flux of events. The second treatise is The Emptiness of the Unreal. This idea brings up the concept of man created by magic. According to Sung Chao, things exist, and at the same time, they do not exist. This concept can be seen as a practical extension of the first treatise. For Sung Chao, things come to pass as a result of various causes, and these things perish when those causes are gone, as a man created by magic. Again, he cements his belief that the past does not come to the present, but he extends this further to question reality. The last treatise is Prajna is Not Knowledge. The main goal of this treatise is to point to the middle path. It does so in a manner that truly shows Sung Chao's Taoist influences. Prajna prajna is sage wisdom, not everyday knowledge. It is empty and has no phenomenal qualities. Perhaps its most remarkable quality is in its simplicity. According to Sengchao, it lacks an object of knowledge, something that ordinary knowledge possesses. A ball, for example, is a label and an object. With prajna, the object is unnecessary. It is simply what it is, emptiness and activity. Sengchao's nature of consciousness showcases his Taoist influences. Sengchao's views of the nature of consciousness are seen with the concepts of ultimate knowledge and mentation. All knowledge, or savajnata, is simply described as not knowing, yet all-knowing. This description, however vague it may seem, is sufficient for Sengchao, as he contends that problems arise with defining objects. This tendency to label objects is called mentation. Mentation is the field or boundary that everyday knowledge places on the mind. It is very limiting because it labels and gives attributes. To Sengchao, its utility is only with respect to the world and the consciousness of the world. It lacks subtlety and comprehension of what he ambiguously refers to as the markless. All knowledge is possible because its mind has no boundaries. Because of this, Sengchao contends that omniscience is possible. Sengchao's Taoist influences are seen throughout his views on the nature of consciousness. The idea that names do not truly match reality, that names are useless, are nods to basic Taoist principles. Language is a distractor, and it cannot aid in the actual attainment of the object in said question. When we label things, we limit them to that name, and in turn, we limit our minds. We must keep in mind, as Sengchao explains, the myriad of things are not absolute, but rather arbitrary designations. Sengchao's views on consciousness are consistently paradoxical. This can result in great confusion when trying to understand his theories, but it is important to have his ultimate goal in mind. This goal is to push towards the abolition of mentation and the constrained mind. Paradoxes are employed to show the inefficiency of language. Paradoxes are not used to make theories here, but as stated by Liebenthal, to force the reader to admit to the impossibility of solving the riddle of existence by rational thinking. To Sengchao's reality, is almost equal to enlightenment. It is known as samdi, and it lacks what are said to be discursive symbols and corruption. Sengchao's writing also lacks a term equivalent for reason. For this, he simply states that cognition apprehends marks. What he does say, though, concerns prajna, or all knowledge. Sengchao does not address karma, but he does have much to say about nirvana. His words do not satisfy, but are direct shots at those who believe nirvana is a place or even a state of being. Sengchao's views of nirvana are much like Taoist views of the way. Nirvana is not a state, nor is it a place. It is nameless and cannot be conceptualized. Efforts to do so are futile, and will ultimately result in misunderstanding. Its description is enigmatic and paradoxical, and is much like the Taoist descriptions of the way. Nirvana is unnameable, non-conceptual, indescribable. On writing on the subject, Sengchao says his goal is to silence the heretical discussions concerning that vast space. To seek it is foolish and useless. Ultimately, this paradoxical description is not intended to satisfy, but to destroy an illusion of nirvana being anything like a Buddhist version of heaven. Sengchao's views on Buddhism are infused with ancient Chinese principles such as Taoism. For this reason, some traditional Buddhist concepts are not clearly defined and are often confusing. The significance of Sengchao is actually found in this confusion. Through this confusion, we find a man who is trying to find his way through cultural barriers and beliefs in an effort to carve a pathway from India to China. a path that would aid others in their quest for enlightenment and a free mind.